Hi, this is Zhesheng Li. So today I want to share what I've learned about the Federal Reserve through our class discussion and connect those ideas to what actually happened during the Fed's 2020 monetary policy framework review. So first, we examined how the Fed is independent, even though the president appoints its leaders. The Fed still set the policy free of political influence, and we also talk about how the Federal Reserve is separated into three different parts. And we also discussed whether the Fed target the stock market, and it doesn't, but its interest rate decisions and announcements do have strong indirect effects. Lastly, we studied the primary dealer system. While it concentrated power among large banks, it helps the Fed efficiently implement policy like bond purchases. So the Fed's decision to review its framework in 2020 wasn't random. It was driven by a clear set of challenges. First, since 2028 financial crisis, inflation had remained constantly below the Fed's 2% target, even when unemployment was low. This signaled something wasn't working in the traditional policy model. Second, with interest rate near zero for over a decade, the Fed's standard tool cutting rates had lost its power. It needed to rethink how to simulate the economy when rates couldn't go much lower. Third, there was a growing awareness that headline unemployment doesn't tell the whole story. Many groups, especially low income and minority workers, were still being left behind. The Fed wanted a framework that recognized employment shortfalls more broadly and inclusively. Finally, the Fed wanted to re-examine the effectiveness of tools like forward guidance and quantitative easing, and to rebuild public confidence in its commitment to the 2% inflation target. All of these lead to the first full policy review in the Fed's modern history and to major challenges like flexible average inflation targeting. So the biggest change was adopting a FAIT instead of keeping inflation under 2%. The Fed would now allow temporary overshots to average things out. It also emphasized eliminating shortfalls from full employment, especially for marginalized groups, and it leaned more on communication tools like forward guidance and bond buying to store expectation. The heart of the Brookings article is a set of three expert papers, each asking the question that did the 2020 framework help or hurt the Fed's ability to manage the economy? The first paper by English and Saig points out that the framework was shaped too much by the post-2008 environment, where where it is a time of low inflation and slow recovery. So when inflation surges in 2021, the Fed's communication and tools lacked flexibility. Okay, so the second paper by Charles Evans gave takes a more supportive views. It says the framework did its job, especially under low inflation condition, and suggests that only small updates are needed to improve it. However, the third article by Christina and David Romer is the most critical one. They argue that the Fed's focus on employment shortfalls caused it to wait too long before rising inflation rate. The framework, they say, contributed to the inflation problem by locking the Fed into the past that wasn't responsive enough. So these three papers highlight different interpretations, but they all agree on one thing, which is the framework needs more adaptability for future shocks. And the paper by English and Thick is a great bridge between our class material and what we discuss in class and the real world policy. It shows how the Fed's communication and tools like forward guidance and asset purchases shape market expectations, and even constrained flexibility when inflation rose. It not only it not it's not about political interferences. It's about how the Fed's own strategy and structure may have slowed its ability to adapt. And it ties directly to what we discussed in class. The limitation of communication tools, the indirect targeting of markets, and the role of primary dealers in implementing large-scale policy. So in the end, this experience helped me move from a theory to practice. I learned that monetary policy is not just about formulas, it's about making real-time decisions in a world that constantly surprised us. The 2020 review was a bold idea by the Fed. It shows a commitment to inclusion, patience, and transparency. But the critics also reveal that too much rigidity in communication and structure can backfire, especially when condition changes. So for me, the biggest takeaway is that the Fed and the central bank in general must be ready to adjust the frameworks, rethink tools, and respond fast. As a student, we should learn to look at policy not just in terms of what is writing, but how it plays out in markets, in employment, and also in public trust. Thank you. This is end of my presentation.